All right, welcome back, and another video here for Strategic Self-Reliance and Defense. My name is Rich Kutchman, and today I'm going to continue the video series on primary assessment. Right, again, we're talking primary assessment during wilderness first aid or emergency medical technician, as an EMT. Primary assessment, again, is, remember, it's just to ID those life-threatening injuries, things that might kill the patient very quickly if you don't intervene. So primary assessment. Mnemonic we use in the primary assessment is ABCDE. In the last video we covered A, which was airway. Today we're going to cover B, breathing. Okay. So what is breathing? Breathing is simply the mechanical process of taking air in and exhaling air back out of the lungs. Right? That is breathing in a nutshell. Breathing is that mechanical process of pulling air in, kicking it back out. Now, there's a lot more to it than that, obviously. Gas exchanges, O2 for CO2. There's all we're talking about negative pressures in the interthoracic cavity to facilitate that, which requires diaphragm movement, rib cage. A lot involved here, but really in a nutshell, it's getting air in, getting air back out of the lungs. Okay. And in the primary assessment, all we're doing is taking a very quick look to see, is the patient breathing? Is the victim breathing? And if they're breathing, is it adequate? Right? And I'm going to define adequate for you. Right? Adequate breathing is the way most of us breathe 99.9% of the time. Right? It's regular, it's even, and it's effortless. Right? Now that might be different if you're on the treadmill and you're going at 9 miles per hour, and you got the incline set. That's not effortless, right? But it's still normal, adequate breathing. Okay? Inadequate breathing is obviously if you're not breathing at all. That's inadequate. That's absence of breathing. That's apnea. We call that. Or somebody that's got gasping breathing, right? That gasping, they're fighting to get air, right? That's inadequate breathing. Inadequate breathing is also really fast or really slow, right? And without getting overly involved here, just know that in an adult at rest, normal respiratory rate, the rate we breathe, is about 12 to 20 breaths per minute. Okay? Now we're not asking you to count them necessarily, although it's not hard to do, right? You just get kind of close. I like to put my hand on somebody's chest, get kind of close, and you see, and you count. Look at your watch, and if you go for like 30 seconds, 1, 2, right? You count their breathing, and we get to 30 seconds. Let's say it's 10. Double it, 20. Now you're 20 breaths per minute. That is normal. If they're 40, that's way too fast. Okay? Unless they're running a marathon. Okay? If they're 6, it's too slow. Okay? So inadequate is too fast, too slow, very shallow. Right? They're barely taking any air in with each breath. Right? Think about things like when I had rib fractures, a bunch of ribs, 13 ribs fractured. Okay? You can't breathe. It hurts. So you take very shallow breaths because you don't want those ribs to move because it hurts. Well, eventually that's going to catch up to you and that's going to go bad. So very shallow. Labored, where you're really working to breathe. Okay? Irregular. Irregular just means, right, it's like maybe, right, it's a weird pattern. Right? And that, a lot of times, usually that is from a metabolic problem or a brain problem. Or again, I said gasping breaths. You're gasping. That's a lot of times that's what we call agonal breathing. It's like those last breaths before you stop breathing. All right. So breathing, is it adequate or is it inadequate? If it's adequate, you do nothing. Simple. You move on. Right? A, B, C. You'd move to C in your assessment. If it's inadequate, you got to stop and do something. Okay. And what you do in B as an intervention is breathe for somebody, right? If they're not breathing adequate, you have to breathe for them. We call that rescue breathing. Okay. We all have seen this on video. If we've taken a BLS class, you know exactly what this is: mouth to mask, bag valve mask. You know, the big bag valve you see in the ER. So you breathe for somebody. Remember, you got to open the airway so the air actually gets in. If it's mouth to mouth, right? Open their airway, head tilt, chin lift, jaw thrust, whichever one you prefer. Mouth over their mouth, pinch their nose. One normal breath, your normal breath. Okay, if it's an adult to an adult. If it's an adult to a small child, it's not a full breath, right? They have smaller lungs. You can't give them all your volume. So, all right, again, adult to adult, rescue breathing, one breath every 5 to 6 seconds. Okay, every 5 to 6 seconds. That'll work out to about 10 to 12 breaths per minute. That's perfect. Okay. If you have one, use a barrier device. Okay, mouth to mask, or those little fold-out plastic barriers that you put on. That way, their blood, their saliva, their whatever they've got in their airway or in their mouth or in their stomach doesn't end up in your mouth. Okay, it happens. All right, so that's breathing in a nutshell, right? So determine, are they breathing? Is it adequate or inadequate? If it's inadequate, you provide rescue breathing, mouth to mask, or bag valve mask. Okay? Ambu bag or bag valve mask requires some training. It's not the easiest to do, and most of us aren't going to own those anyway. So a barrier device is the easiest, but mouth to mouth if you don't mind swapping spit with somebody. All right. So anyway, that is B. That's it for today's video, and in the next video, we'll continue with mnemonic. We'll get to C, circulation. Right? Again, my name is Rich Kuchman. In the barn, enjoying a cigar and a beer, and I will see you next time. Hope to see you in class. I'm with Strategic Self-Reliance and Defense. Later.